our wisdom will always outstrip our knowledge. And we're afraid of our knowledge. And so much so that we're afraid of artificial intelligence as knowledge. We're afraid of so many bits of knowledge. But trusting in wisdom, like there is a trust, like wisdom is an energy. It's a frequency. It's a thing. Like our wisdom will outstrip our knowledge. And you've got to believe in that because it's what's brought you this far. Like your wisdom has consistently, you're here. Right? You've known things, you haven't known things, you've been in difficult, precarious situations, you've been in awesome situations, but you're here. There's a wisdom guiding you. There's a purpose that's animating you to where you are right now. You know, this is all happening for a reason.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Dreamcatcher podcast, a place where your dreams can find a voice. I'm your host, Celine Chenoy. Thank you to all of you who return every week to tune in to become a better version of yourself. Make sure you hit subscribe if you haven't already, and rate our show if you enjoy this episode. Your purpose is why you wake up in the morning feeling eager to start the day. It's more than a job. It's what drives you and connects you to everyone and everything. We all have a natural need for purpose, a feeling that we know our place and what we can offer the world. But finding our purpose is not always simple and straightforward. I invited Amrit Sandhu, someone well-versed in this process, to help us gain clarity and move in the right direction. Amrit Sandhu is an international speaker, podcast host, and founder of the Inspired Evolution podcast. Certified by Eckhart Tolle's School of Awakening, he is also Mindvalley's Master Certified Trainer for Australia and India. Amrit delivers keynotes, talks, seminars, and workshops for the Inspired Evolution and Mindvalley in the United States, Europe, Asia, and Australia. During our conversation, Amrit will explain what it means to live your purpose and how to discover what brings us meaning. He'll also describe steps to follow a value-based life aligned with our mind, heart, and spirit. Hi, Amrit. How are you doing today?
I am so good. Such a treat to be here, Celine. Better for being here with you, to be honest. Thank you for having me.
Oh, absolutely. I'm just so happy to have you on the show. I have to first ask, how is life out there down under?
How is life out? Well, for most people, when they're asking me that question, it's because they're tuning in from somewhere further further east, sorry. So, yeah, it's the future that I'm in the time zone, and the future is bright, hence the name of the Inspired Evolution podcast. No, it's good. We're actually about to go into winter, and summer's been a bit weird. I think the seasons around the world everywhere have been a bit weird. Like, you know, they say the earth is sort of warming up. So, yeah, that's meant a lot of different things in a lot of different places. So it's been interesting to sort of witness that firsthand. But yeah, Australia's in a really beautiful, privileged country. So yeah, I'm in a really nice little pocket and raising a young family, touch wood. I've got a 2.5-year-old and an 8-week-old. And so,
wow.
Yeah.
You've got your hands full.
Touch wood. I've been saying the juggle is real. Not the struggle is real, but the juggle is real.
Oh, I love that. Now, that's a great way of putting a positive spin on things, which is why we have people like you on the show, because we need that kind of energy. And I have to say that you post some excellent content through your own podcast, Inspired Evolution. I've had an opportunity to watch a few of your interviews, and as a fellow podcaster, I just have to say, I mean, I know how much work and dedication it takes to host a podcast, and you know, it's not easy. So I want to start it by acknowledging all the great work that you're doing.
Wow, thank you so much, Sister Bear. That means a lot to me. I'm really in awe of what you're up to in the world as well, and so it means a lot to me to receive that from you. And yeah, it's especially at the depths from which you're acknowledging that, having gone through so much of your own podcasting journey as well, and just the witness that you're holding in there. That means a lot. Thank you, really. Yeah, I really appreciate that. Yeah,
of course. And both of us represent a minority group in the world of podcasting. There are not a lot of people like us in this space.
Yeah, it's but it's also, well, but And it's also kind of inspiring to feel into just what that opens up for others, like that potentially, well, even like my own kids, like I think about it now, like this, like YouTuber for the generation sort of after us is one of the most desired jobs. And like in our generation, like even now I'm like YouTuber and they're like, what? Really? It's like, yeah, but then also recognizing the imprint that it's going to leave, even just in my own most closest concentric circle of influence under like to my children is like, yeah, actually anything's possible if you set your mind to it. Go on, set your mind to it. So that inspires me. And then to think about, like you said, being of a minority group and sort of seeing what also that unlocks for other people that are potentially in just circles just outside of that, how that shifts their awareness is quite inspiring to feel. Yeah, touch wood.
Yeah, great. People who follow a podcast like ours are what I call seekers, right? They are searching for their meaning, their purpose, and anything that really gives a sense of gravitas to their life. And you and I do this work because we are tuned into our mission. We know why we're doing this. And you've articulated your purpose beautifully. You say that your life purpose is to help people navigate the story of their lives and the character they embody to the best of their ability. So, Amrit, can you please take us through that journey of self-realization to the point where you started living your purpose?
Wow. So great question. I'll try and keep it concise. So actually, like I've had two major dark nights of the soul, if you want to call it that way. Touch wood, the first was being diagnosed with depression. The diagnosis itself wasn't the dark night of the soul. That was sort of the coming to the light, if you will. But the actual struggling with 6 years of depression was really hard. One of the biggest gifts, though, as you'll notice with most heroes' journeys or, the dark nights of the soul, is there's always something that you come back with that's quite profound if you're open and aware to it. So that first challenge brought me mindfulness and awareness, and meditation really was the gift. And I share that because, there was a lot of breakdown to breakthrough that brought me to there. And I thought I'd broken through to quite the place, and little did I know that despite all the tools that I'd garnered from that level of self-awareness, from having gone through 6 years of depression and mindfulness and meditation being the thing that heals me, that's a whole nother story unto itself. When I finally landed in a position of, okay, like I'm in a really good mental health space, having used all these incredible self-healing tools, I'm now going to university, graduated top of university, was able to land a career that was literally like, the creme de la creme in many ways. Touch wood. When I graduated university, like I passed with flying colors and graduated top of my university. And that sounds very gloaty. But the reason I share that, touch wood, is because when I was diagnosed with my depression the first time around, and it was like, whoa, like I recognized my depression only because I was getting asked to leave university. And so then I graduated top of the university, and this like same person, different mental health state, asked to leave university, graduated top of an entire university across all degrees and cohorts. It was like, when they asked me like, why should we give you this award? My response was, well, this story, we talked about the story and the purpose that we're living, like it would give me opportunity to inspire others, just to shine the light on the importance of mental health. Right, and just the transformation that's possible in 3 short years if you address things, and also address things naturally. Like I took meditation, mindfulness as my tools. But that to say, when I got the job, I got an amazing job. When you graduate with such colours, touch wood, you afforded an incredible opportunities left, right and centre pouring out at you. You can take the pick of your litter, and I took on, the pick of the litter. Incredibly well-paying job, and by everybody's mean and measure, I had made it. I was successful, and I remember going along to that job for another 7 years, touch wood, and it just got more and more. Like part of my background and training, like I've learned about NLP. I don't apply too much of it, but, I've learned about it. So I'm conscious with the power of words. But I try not to say this, but, it was soul sucking, and every day just, it felt denser and denser and more like intense, touch wood. Now I've got clear languaging around it, but back then I had no idea. Like, it was just like, I knew I was made for more. I knew there was something different that I was meant to be doing. And, there's nothing wrong with what I was doing. Like, it was incredible, but just not for me. And now I articulate it as I was living out of alignment with my values. And that's like a really easy way to articulate it. I wish I had that awareness back then. And that's a lot of what my coaching for others focuses on now. And I'm sure, we can unpack that further. But that was the visceral realization that I was going along to work regularly, and it was just like, painful is one thing. I already was aware of what depression felt like because of what I'd gone through, and I had tools to navigate life, to not dive and dip into those spaces again. But it was dark, it was challenging, and the tools were supportive. But then also you could argue that the tools, I was in a space where I was contemplating quotes like, I don't know if we shed our demons or we just learn to live above them, like those sort of places. And that's indicative enough that it was quite challenging as a period. And so, there was many sort of markers, if you will, or indicators. I remember even just the first day I signed up to the new role, I saw my current CEO at the time, if you will, or regional director, and he wasn't living in alignment with all the stuff that I'd had to heal through my depression in the first place, that I'd gone through to get to where I was. And I was like, you know what, maybe it's okay. Maybe I'll be the change that I want to see in the world, and it didn't, ultimately, it was just the organization, the leadership, everything that was run there. And again, not that it's wrong, it just wasn't right for my values and the fit and makeup that I am. And I wasn't meant to be in that place. But I think many of us try to champion our way forwards based on other people's prescriptions of what their expectations are, whether they're parental, whether they're societal, whether they're environmental, whether they're based on your country, or, even, just what a life well lived is meant. I'm conscious, even us having a podcast conversation like this, at some point someone will take away the meaning that living life on their own path is what is most best for them. And for some people it's completely fine to have a job. For many people it's completely fine to have a job. For me, I had to craft out my own entrepreneurial path, because just that's what was right for me. And now I coach intrapreneurs, I coach entrepreneurs. Like, it's totally fine. Like, you don't have to be in business. I think there's this new sensationalism around being an entrepreneur, which is actually somewhat toxic as well, because if you can't make it as an entrepreneur, then you're a failure. But most entrepreneurs, the best ones, are actually very comfortable with failure, and their makeup is made like that. And even within that, we can dive into rabbit holes. Like, there are lifestyle entrepreneurs and then there are performance entrepreneurs. I'm totally a lifestyle entrepreneur. But we're down another rabbit hole. But all that to sort of say, career misalignment, 7 years, significant difficulties and challenges within that. The blessing that popped out of that space was the podcast, the Inspired Evolution. When you rub the cat the wrong way long enough, friction appears. And that friction basically gave birth to me being inspired to evolve. I decided I was inspired by people such as yourself, entrepreneurs, authors, speakers, podcasters, coaches, creatives. They're able to live life on their own terms. Surely, I should be able to activate some of this, but I've got no formal education in how to do this. But I want to evolve into living that life of freedom. And so hence started a podcast of interviewing people every week and trying to learn and replicate.
Oh, thank you for sharing that. That's such a beautiful story, Amrit. I want to dig into something a little bit. It seems to me that you've always had this sort of awareness, like you were connected to your inner compass. Like, for instance, when you were depressed, you realized that you needed help. You needed to find tools to help you get out of that state of mind. And then even when you were in your job, you realized that your values weren't aligned with that of the company that you're working for. So it seems to me that you had this inner dialogue that really made you aware of when you seemed like you were out of alignment with your path. So where does that come from?
So it's interesting because initially when I was depressed, I didn't have an awareness. I would say I was like the fish in the bowl that didn't know that I was swimming in water.
And that's the case for most people who are depressed.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. And the interesting thing is when like the way I coach people now through like that are dealing with other people that are going through mental health, just to be clear, I'm not a therapist, I'm a coach. Yeah. There's a world of difference. Coaches look forward and help you on your path forward. Therapists help you look back and support you with unlocking things that have happened in the past, just to put it succinctly. But yeah, like mental health it's like being in a ditch. Yeah. And basically what happens is when you're in the ditch, you look around and you think everybody's living in the ditch with you and that there's just walls everywhere. And so you're like, yeah, that's normal. Like we're all living in this ditch. And so I was in that ditch. Whereas when you've got positive mental health, you're above, like you're not above that person, like morally, but you're kind of living outside of the ditch and you can look across, you can see horizons.
You have the
see
perspective.
the world looks
You have to have that higher
completely differently, right? So yeah, typical. I was in that ditch. And so I wasn't really aware that I was the fish in the bowl. It wasn't until all of my life around me cracked and crumbled, like got asked to leave university, relationship falling apart, like friendships, like everything you can imagine, touch wood, that could have crumbled was crumbling. And it was like, something is seriously wrong. Like this is not right. And I was blessed enough at that time, touch wood, that I was going through this in a time like now. Mental health awareness is something, we're doing podcast. People talk about this a lot now. Back then, it was just hitting the zeitgeist and becoming a bit more normalized. Like there was probably like a billboard on anxiety, like, maybe one in the entire city that I was in, but you'd saw it or you'd seen it printed, like, are you struggling, like on the side of a bus,
Yeah. That was around the 90s, I think, right? I'm guessing we're around the same age.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Right. And so that was enough for me to land in a situation where I was comfortable enough to go see a psychologist, which even for a young adolescent male was quite a big deal, if I'm honest with you, because you're pretty bulletproof when you're a young male growing up in a Western society at that stage. You're like impervious. You're meant to be just rock solid, and to be sitting opposite a psychologist speaks volumes in and of itself. But contrastingly, the second time round, when I was going through the challenge with career misalignment, that was somehow amplified by the awareness. So the first time I wasn't even aware, but the second time around, because I had meditation, I was entirely aware. I knew I did, like you described, had this awareness of this message in my heart, which was your health is your purpose and your purpose is your health. And I kind of had felt in through awareness, through meditation, through, like I'd come to this realization. And yet, even though I had the realization, it was somehow even more painful because I had the awareness of this pure, pristine message touch that was in my heart. And yet my life was an enactment against every single molecule of that message, which was like, your health is your purpose and your purpose is your health. And you're like, this doesn't feel like you on purpose, bro. And so that was just like, it was almost like, I wish I didn't have the awareness of the message, because now I'm like sort of choking myself with my own, I don't want to call it wisdom, but like it just was this really
I actually
painful place to be.
Carolyn Mace, she's I don't know if you've heard of her, but she's a really famous healer, and she's written some great books. And she says our intuition can actually be our biggest source of pain because it tells us the truth. It doesn't BS.
It's a transformative fire. Let's put it that way.
Yes, because it says, you shouldn't be doing that. That's all right for you. And they're like, nah, actually.
And there's, intuition. I've interviewed many people in that space, and unanimously, that's like the voice of intuition is very quiet. Listen, and we're just like, shut up. It's like,
the lower self, the reptilian brain is like, oh, whatever.
Until the fire gets too bright, until the friction gets too
and then it's like, see, told you so.
Yeah. You're like, thanks, bro. But yeah, so that was the second time around. So the awareness was there. And yet despite that, my 3D self was going through actions, not knowing how to integrate the awareness that it was carrying. And so that was a whole challenge unto itself. And we can talk further about that. Yeah.
Something I want to talk about is purpose, because, you have clearly been able to start living your purpose. Yeah, of course, you had a transition phase, but now you're living it. And many people find the doctrine of live your purpose to be a little bit vague and esoteric. I know I felt that way when I first heard it on the Oprah Winfrey show. I think I was about 17 years old. She was the one championing these kind of self-help credos at that time. And to me, I guess I was a bit young probably to really wrap my head around that concept. But I eventually got it. So how would you describe a purpose-driven life to somebody? And do you think everyone is capable of living that? Or is it just limited to people who
great question.
feel alive, who feel like it's, a privilege?
It is so not a privilege. It's your birthright. So let's get super high level for one quick second, and then we'll just get super practical in the next second, right? So super high level, we are the universe looking in on itself. Like most people, even scientists that I've dropped in with, are quite like somewhat agnostic, like that's sort of still a foundation stone that we can sort of come together around, right? It's like somehow consciousness is having this trippy dippy experiment where it is looking in on itself as Amrit to Celine and Celine to Amrit right now, but it is just universe doing universe, right? And this is just what it's decided to do in this moment of time. And so if we unpack that further, like one of the key things, and this is where I'll start using some terminology that is relevant to how I approach the conversation, but curiosity is the fundamental tenet of one of the fundamental tenets of the universe. Like, why is it looking in on itself? We can't decide much about what the universe is here to do. Why is existence existing? Well, people have been trying to find that out forever, right? But it is curious because why is it looking in on itself? And so if it is looking in on itself, that curiosity, this is not like, surface level curiosity, like desires, which can get run rampant, right? This is deeper curiosity. Like there is a sacred curiosity that we all embody. Mm-hmm. And so if you are fulfilling that sacred curiosity, that's the purpose of you being here. You're a looking glass, you're a lens looking in on the universe. So if you can get in tune and look in alignment with exactly what the universe is trying to witness and see through the lens that you are, that's your purpose, right? And that is so multifold. In some moment, I'm meant to be a father. In another moment, I'm meant to be a friend. In another moment, I'm meant to be an engineer. In another moment, I'm meant to be, applying medical help, even though I'm not qualified to, but I can bandage stuff up, And in another moment, I'm meant to be dressing well. In another moment, I'm meant to be dressing daggy. In another moment, I'm meant to be going for a walk. In another moment, I'm meant to be a pet owner, right? But that's what the universe wants to see in that given moment through that particular individual. So we are all the universe looking in on itself. So do we all have purpose? Well, we're all put here for a reason to look in. What is that reason to look in? So now that's super esoteric, and your question was like, hey, it's super esoteric, and I've just made it even more esoteric.
Yeah, you went all Deepak Chopra there, but anyway.
And so let's bring the engineer in, right? Yes. Welcome back. So it literally just comes back to your values. And so this goes back to why I didn't feel like I was made for the job and the job wasn't made for me. Like now I look back and say I was completely out of alignment to my values. Yeah. So get really practical about it. It's like, what are your values? And so values are beautiful because A, it's what the world will value you for. B, it's what you value, not particularly in that order, but it's such a robust framework to get really clear on, hey, like, what is it that I am here to do? Almost like if we are the looking glass, right? The different angles that are grooved into that glass are your values if you look at it that way. So for me, just to make it super accessible for everybody, and like a practical example that I can provide is my values are connection, contribution, and celebration. Yeah, so as long as I'm connecting, as long as I'm contributing, as long as we're celebrating, I'm on purpose. Yeah. And so when you look back to a career in construction management, it's like, are you connecting? Maybe I'm building bridges and connecting people from here to there, but I was building infrastructure, not really. Are you contributing? I was building high-rise towers, immigrant families were getting homes, and so maybe somewhat there was a contribution there. Was it the kind of contribution I wanted to have? I was searching for that meaning. Was there any celebration in that? Not really, right? So half a value, maybe one of my top 3 values was met. But right now, when you fast forward to like, okay, a podcast emerged and then I started coaching people and then public speaking emerged, seminars, talks. Do I get to connect in podcasting, coaching, speaking. Yes, there's a lot of connection in podcasting. We're doing that right now. We're connecting to people all over the world through this medium of like what the actual, right? So podcasting, connection, tick. Coaching, connection, tick. Speaking, connection, absolutely, tick. Next biggest value, contribution. Do I get to contribute in the podcast? Hopefully this is supporting people on their path. Coaching, definitely I'm contributing to people's lives, touch wood. Public speaking, yes, absolutely, there's a contribution there. Celebration, podcasting, yes, hopefully you leave this, celebrating life with a little bit more joie de vivre, touch wood, hopefully. Coaching, absolutely, public speaking, absolutely again, So now when like I'm doing things in alignment to my purpose, it's like really easy to diagnose how to get there. It's like, well, just take a look at your values. These are your values. And if you're living into those values, you're on purpose. And if you're not, then, it doesn't matter if it's the most amazing opportunity and you graduated like really well and did really well and, the world was your oyster and you picked this particular opportunity. It is an incredible opportunity, but not for you. It's someone else's opportunity, pardon you, And so your opportunity to basically go in alignment to your values. And so that's the real practical rubber hits the road. Discover your values. And from that point, take action towards living into them. Okay.
And how do they discover their values?
Oh, this is going to sound like a sales advert, but inspiredevolution.com /values. There's a 20-minute masterclass on how to discover your values.
Perfect.
Now, pardon me for doing that, but
that's all right. Really no, we need resources. We need resources. I'm sure yours is very, very helpful.
It's completely free. You can go check it out. It's just because I get this question a lot, right? Yeah. So the exercise is really as a whole list of values. It's a super basic exercise because I've trained with Mindvalley, Eckhart, Tolle, Heart Math, Gene Keys. The wisdom that is true is always simple, to the point now where, I'm sure you've got this as a podcast. When someone's overcomplicating things, part of me is like, what are they trying to sell me? It's like, I hate to say that out loud. It's kind of the vibe. And it's super simple. There's a whole sheet. There's about 5 sheets of just a list of values. You go through and everything that touches you, like that has an impulse around, you can't circle too many words. You go through, you circle all the words. Once you've circled all of them, you collect the like terms, you put them in a bucket. You basically label the buckets. You might end up with like 10 odd buckets looking like health, abundance, opportunity, growth, connection. And then you basically have these buckets and then you label the buckets. That is your first part of your values. You've got labeled buckets of things that matter to you that you value, because these are the things that matter to you. These are words that spoke to you, right? Sneaky little hack. Like if you see it in other people, it's in you, right? Like I look at Celine, I see joy. Someone else looks at Celine, someone else sees organization. What is she? She's both. She's neither. Amrit's joy, this other person's organized, right? Touch wood. And that's an indicator of like your values. And that's the really quick formula, but there's a proper masterclass there for you to go through it. I just didn't want to sound like I was selling it. And then
No, you absolutely not. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that with us. What if someone listening to this is in a job that they don't feel like is a really good fit for them? Is it possible to kind of carve their own place there once they know what their values are? Because some people will like, well, we need the paycheck. We don't really just want to leave. So is it possible for them to create a place for them within the organization, or at least do that on a temporary basis before, like as they make that transition to another career that they feel is much more suitable for them?
Yeah, so this is a great question and there's many responses. I know it sounds like a simple question that should have a simple response. Generally, yes. So an organization, if it's progressive enough, should have an opportunity for you to be able to pivot into a role that's aligned to your values. The biggest challenge I find is most people have taken on technical roles when they're usually asking this question, or maybe it's just the demographic that I attract, that are then looking to pivot to like a softer skill role that's more humanities based or people oriented. And then they're finding that, oh, it doesn't pay as much, but I've also already got a mortgage and then I've got a family, and how do I pivot now? So the short answer is yes, the organization should be able to support you to pivot. If not, you should be able to find something that you can pivot to within the organization and make it lucrative enough. And if not, there is definitely something within your industry that you can pivot to. And if it doesn't feel like there is, we can have a conversation. Like that's the blinkers are on the horse at that point. Your skill sets are super translatable, and that's where a lot of the coaching work that I do, touch wood, comes into it. So the short answer is yes. The long answer is, for some people, It's about building something on the side. Like for me, I had the podcast for the longest while I was still working in engineering. And actually, it made engineering totally fine. It made it so much more palatable because I was growing this thing on the side that was totally in alignment to my values. And the podcast for that period was my mental health strategy. I was getting a lot of connection, a lot of contribution, a lot of celebration. It didn't matter.
I can relate to that. I can relate to that.
Right? And so for a lot of people, it's like, hey, let's just create something on the side. And, it might make your entire work palatable. You might find that your work funnels in so many resources into this thing on the side because you might be doing something philanthropic that it makes this totally fine, like not a necessary evil, but like a necessary thing that you can actually tolerate and deal with, right? And so it's like, that's fine. Like I'm actually happy exchanging this amount of time because this pays way better than anything else I could create on any other side. And I can channel a lot of resources into said thing that I absolutely love. And that provides me with a lot of meaning. We can architect that out and have a look at it. Oftentimes what also happens is sometimes that thing on the side is what I call, and I got this from Tim Ferriss, the concept of monkey roping, right? So you're holding on to your previous job and then you've created something on the side, and it could be another job, could be a freelancing gig, could be something that you've entrepreneurially set up for yourself, your own podcast, your own business. And you start to grip onto this other rope and you don't let go of the rope of the old job until the new rope is something that you've got firmly a handle on and it's firmly got a handle on you as well, right? Like it can support you and you can see that actually this is going to be something that is going to be just as financially supportive or lucrative as what I'm currently doing, if not more, right? And then you let go. And then you kind of let go of the other one. And it is a bit of a stressful period for some people to be juggling two things at the same time. Yeah, of course. Yeah. But it's a mental stress, but spiritually it's fulfilling, it's rewarding. It's hard to articulate that. But I've coached over 300 people now, many of them through this transition, and it makes no sense logically that you'll be doing something on the side whilst you're doing something currently that kind of feels like it's burning you out, and yet you'll stop burning out.
Yeah, because it supports you. It feeds your soul. And what's more important than that?
It's epic how it does that, right? And it's beautiful because you start to drop into flow in life around these activities that you're participating in when you're living into your values and you're on purpose. There's flow there. And flow is so inherently rewarding, right? It's spacious, it's timelessness, it's effortlessness, it's richness. Like you expand and you feel so much better, right? And so therein lies back to, I feel like a bit of a sensei. Health is purpose, purpose is health, and there's back to that nugget of wisdom that, touch wood, been carrying in my heart, which is your health is your purpose and your purpose is your health.
Yeah. And I love that you keep repeating that because we really need to hear that. I mean, it's really sad, but mental health issues are on the rise globally, and the younger generations are being hit, particularly the Gen Z generation. But you believe that living your purpose can alleviate this problem to a certain extent. What advice do you have for people who are actually, belong to this younger generation or have kids in that generation? Like, what advice do you have for them to begin finding their way back to that sense of authenticity and alignment with what feels right for them?
So big first thing, I will put a massive asterisk on what we're discussing because there are some people that do have a chemical imbalance in their mind and they do need support chemically to level out their serotonin levels, level out their GABA levels, and that can be really supportive to go see a psychologist, see a psychiatrist and get some medication and bridge through a period of time. Some people will argue that those supports are super addictive, and that's a whole nother podcast and it's a whole nother conversation. But nonetheless, just an asterisk there. So to answer your question, it circles back to, again, you're never too young, you're never too old to get clear on what your values are, right? Like you need to get super clear on what your values are. Now I think about being a father and being a parent, and I've thought about this question, like the world that my kids are growing into is very different to the world that I'm in, right? And I'm sure my father had the same thought to some degree, but the technology, growth curve is exponential.
I know.
It's insane.
It went from a 0 to 100 for us millennials.
It's full on. It is really full on, right? And so in that space, one of the things I've had to come to terms with is I will not have the skills to support my children, like, to navigate the world that they're in, right? Like, I look at, like, my dad doesn't know anything about podcasting. Like, he just doesn't, right? For him, this is like, what are you doing? You know, and it's like, Dad, I've got my own kind of radio show. And he's like, radio, that's pastime. You know? And it's like, Dad, no, like, it's legitimately a thing. Like, it's fun, and I'm enjoying it.
I'm laughing because we have parents from the same culture. So
yeah.
I get it.
I said it in your dad's voice, not mine.
It does sound like him.
And so, you know, recognizing that I'm going to be the same sort of like creature to my son, you know, sons. And so that to sort of say what I have learned is upon contemplation, what is the thing that I can pass down? And it actually is values. You know, like, I can instill a certain value set within them if it's right for them. Then they can learn from that. Like, some of the values I got handed down to me were humor and humility, touch wood, right? Now, that looked different. My father's humility was different to what humility looks like for me, right? But it's a value set that can then transcend whatever the skill set is required for the time. And so that to say, I believe the greatest responsibility I have as a father is to hand down not just values, but an awareness of how important values are. Now, I believe that to be my purpose in life universally. Like, I'm not just handing it down to my children, I'm handing it, if you haven't been able to tell, to everybody here, right? Like, get clear on your values. But I really feel like if we can take the time to do that work, and it's like 20 minutes in a masterclass, like I shared with you before, it's so accessible. 20 minutes of your time, and you'll be as clear as I am that I'm connection, contribution, celebration. It still baffles, like, I don't want to sound like this, but like, it baffles me that people still won't go do it. It's 20 minutes to get clear. And if a kid was aware of, like, okay, these are my values and such is doing X, Y, and Z, and that's not in alignment with me, but it's great for them, maybe I, you know, don't have to do that dare, you know, or maybe I don't have to make that post, or maybe I don't have to dress this certain way.
Yeah, I think the challenge, Amrit, is that they got to keep it top of mind and make sure that they're not tempted by the allure of social media and other more shallow ways of living, or because that seems to be louder in our society, especially, you know, if they are exposed to social media and their friends are not as self-aware as they should be. So I think having parents like you who kind of instill those values early on is essential.
Yes, and touch wood, part of me thinks about this a lot. Like, it's difficult to, because I've coached a lot of people, and you see a lot of interesting human behavior aspects appear, right? So they're also going to go through challenges, and their challenges are going to be formative for them. If I didn't have my challenges, I wouldn't be who I am today as well, right? So I think I wholly and solely appreciate where you're coming from. There is another dimension to open up in the conversation, just so we have a really robust conversation, that, yeah, there is also space for us to need to navigate stuff, and that we can't live in padded walls as well. The challenges that present themselves are uniquely weaponized, if I can say that. Like, it's pretty full on. Like, people are actually trying to, like, grasp your attention through, like, you know, social media in particular, as an example. The way they've hacked the tools to really, you know, attention is everything. And then when you think about the human mind and how much focus plays a role on stuff. But then also, like, you know, there's, you know, touch wood again, I'm trying my best to promote content out there that actually supports people, and you're trying your best to, you know, put content out there using these tools to support people. So, and if I didn't have that awareness of how challenging the tools can be, I probably wouldn't be doing it the same way. But because, you know, and like, we post positivity relentlessly on our community wall, to the point where people are just like, oh man, like, this is just what I needed. It's like, touch wood, it's kind of what we needed too. Like, so we're just doing our thing, you know, and so nice to have you here. But yeah, look, it is fraught with challenges. But I do think more and more people, as the collective challenges arise, 1 in 2 people being anxious or depressed, more and more conversations like this being had, people in the younger generation switching to dumb phones. What? Why would you go backwards? right? So people, like, the awareness, the collective awakening is happening. Like, things are shifting.
You
And
think
there
so?
is like, oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Breakdown to
You're
breakthrough.
optimistic about
Breakdown to
this. Yeah.
breakthrough.
Yeah.
Yeah. One of the podcasts I did recently left me with this piece of wisdom, which is like, there are guardrails on humanity. Absolutely. Why wouldn't there be? Right? Like, you think about every single thing in your life. We often like to like complain and be victimized and come to a certain point. And I'm putting my hand up in there. Like, I do that. And then when I take a look back, it's like, yeah, but life has always carried me to where I am. So why can't I trust in life? Yeah. And the piece of wisdom was, our wisdom will always outstrip our knowledge. And we're afraid of our knowledge. And so much so that we're afraid of artificial intelligence as knowledge. We're afraid of so many bits of knowledge. But trusting in wisdom, like, there is a trust, like, wisdom is an energy. It's a frequency. It's a thing. Like, our wisdom will outstrip our knowledge. And you've got to believe in that, because it's what's brought you this far. Like, your wisdom has consistently, you're here. Right? You've known things, you haven't known things, you've been in difficult, precarious situations, you've been in awesome situations, but you're here. There's a wisdom guiding you. There's a purpose that's animating you to where you are right now. You know, this is all happening for a reason. And I believe in that breakdown to breakthrough. Touch wood, I've just seen it enough times. Like I said, having coached 300 people, rooms full of people, 16,000 people in an event, like, dude, I consistently asking this question on my podcast. Why do we have to break down to breakthrough? Like, why can't I just be like, can't we just download like enlightenment? Like, why do I have to go through the challenges?
Only it was that easy.
Yeah, right. But it is the formula.
It is.
And so if you see collectively things breaking down, I'm that weird guy. Like, people rock up to a coaching call and they're like, this is broken, this is not working. And I'm like smiling and I'm like, and my smile continues to grow as they're listing out their problems. And I'm conscious at some point I have to apologize for my expression, because it's like, hey, I'm really sorry. I'm just getting more and more excited for you. And they're like, yeah, I know. Like, I'm telling you the darkest stuff and you're like getting happy about it. And it's like, no, but like, the more you're telling me, the more I'm conscious that there's so much friction that the spark of transformation is like, it's basically lit. Like, you just need a little bit of a nudge and you're on your way, you know?
Wow.
So again, that breakdown to break through, like, yeah, I've just seen it that many times now that I'm intimate with the process. And yeah, like, I see it collectively happening for all of us. Touch wood.
Wow. Wow, I absolutely love your take on things, Amrit. You have just such a positive and beautiful energy. It's been such a pleasure speaking to you. And I just want to thank you for your presence and for offering us so much wisdom in this short time that we had. I truly appreciate it.
Celine, touch wood, you are overly kind. I'm just humble old me. Thank you so much for having me on the podcast. It is such a pleasure, and literally it is an honor to be here with you. So thank you for your time, your blessings, and yeah, your questions. I really enjoyed the depths we uncovered here today. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And I just want to let our listeners know, if you're interested in learning more about Amrit and his courses, his coaching and speaking services, please visit his website, amrit.coach. The link will be in the description box.